Life had been kind to me. Extraordinarily so. Every morning, I woke up to the scent of freshly brewed coffee wafting through the house, Sarah humming softly in the kitchen while flipping pancakes for Emma and Noah. Our home, nestled on a quiet suburban street, felt like a sanctuary. The walls were adorned with framed photographs capturing countless memories. Emma's first ballet recital, Noah's triumphant soccer goal, and our family vacation to the mountains where we huddled together under one blanket, laughing over burnt marshmallows. Sarah, my wife of 12 years, had a way of making everything feel lighter. She had this habit of tucking her hair behind her ear when she was focused, her hazel eyes sparkling with determination whether she was planning a birthday party or helping Emma with her science project. Noah, our little whirlwind of energy, never stopped talking about dinosaurs and superheroes, while Emma, with her quieter demeanor, often sat by the window sketching flowers and birds with crayons scattered around her. Evenings were sacred in our household, a time when we'd all gather in the living room. Sarah curled up on the couch with a book, the kids sprawled on the rug, and me struggling to keep up with their board game rules. It was chaotic at times, yes, but it was my chaos, my beautiful, messy, perfect life. This week, however, the house felt unnerving still. Sarah had taken Emma and Noah to her parents' place for her father's birthday celebration. They had left in the morning, the kids bouncing with excitement as they packed their overnight bags. Noah had insisted on bringing his favorite dinosaur figurine while Emma had carefully placed her sketchbook into her backpack, promising to draw something special for Grandpa's birthday. Sarah, ever the planner, had triple-checked the luggage before hugging me goodbye at the door. "Don't forget to eat properly while we're gone," she said with a teasing smile, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. "And try not to overwork yourself, okay?" "I'll be fine," I assured her, kissing her forehead. "Just 2 days, and I'll join you there." The kids waved enthusiastically as they climbed into the car, their voices overlapping with excitement about the upcoming party. I stood at the doorway, watching until the car disappeared down the street, leaving behind an odd silence that settled over the house. It wasn't the first time I'd been home alone, but the absence of their presence felt heavier this time. The echo of their laughter, the scattered toys in the living room, the faint scent of Sarah's perfume, all seemed amplified in their absence. I turned back inside, reminding myself that I had work to finish. Deadlines loomed, and if I wanted to enjoy the weekend with my family without distractions, I needed to get through it. The hours blurred as I buried myself in spreadsheets and emails, the house growing colder and quieter as the evening wore on. After sending my family off to Sarah's parents' house for the weekend, the silence in our home felt deafening. Without Emma's giggles and Noah's superhero impersonations, the house seemed almost foreign. I had promised to join them in 2 days, once I wrapped up a project for work that couldn't wait. So after waving goodbye and watching their car disappear down the street, I settled into my office chair, determined to power through the pile of work that awaited me. The desk lamp cast a warm glow over my workspace, highlighting the stack of papers, the half-empty mug of coffee and the flickering cursor on my laptop screen. Hours blurred together as I typed furiously, stopping only to stretch my back or rub my tired eyes. The hum of the rain outside grew louder, but I barely noticed, consumed by deadlines and spreadsheets. By the time I hit save on the final document, the clock on the wall read 11 p.m., a wave of exhaustion washed over me and I leaned forward, resting my head on the desk. The cool surface against my forehead felt oddly comforting, and before I knew it, the steady rhythm of the rain lulled me into an unintentional sleep, right there in my chair. A few hours passed, and it was 1:30 a.m. when I was abruptly pulled from sleep by the insistent buzzing of my phone on the desk. Groggy, I blinked against the dim glow of my office lamp and reached for the phone. Sarah's name lit up the screen. I swiped to answer, clearing my throat. "Hey love," I said, my voice rough from sleep. "Hi," she replied, her tone soft and warm, like a comforting blanket. "Did I wake you?" "Sort of," I admitted with a chuckle, rubbing my eyes. "What's up?" "I just wanted to check if you ate anything." "You always forget to eat when you're working late," she said, her concern apparent. Outside I noticed the steady rhythm of rain tapping against the window, a chill beginning to seep into the room. "Not yet," I confessed. "I'll grab something soon, I promise." "Good," she said, her tone softening. "I miss you, you know? It's strange not having you here." "I miss you too," I replied, a smile tugging at my lips despite the late hour. Moments like these reminded me how much I treasured her. Before hanging up, she added, "Oh, one more thing. It's colder than I expected here. Middle of October and the rain isn't helping. Could you bring one of my warm hoodies when you come? They should be somewhere in the storeroom." "Of course," I said. "Now go to sleep. I'll see you soon." "All right. Love you," she said, her voice softer now. "Love you too," I replied before the call ended, leaving the room silent once again, except for the rain. I leaned back in my chair, stretching and glancing at the storeroom door down the hall. With a sigh, I got up, shivering slightly as the cold air hit me, and made my way to find her hoodie. As the rain tapped steadily against the windows and the chill in the air deepened, I found myself standing in the storeroom. Sarah had asked me to bring one of her warm hoodies, and although I had assured her it was no problem, it was proving to be more of a challenge than I anticipated. The storeroom was a jungle of stacked boxes, half-forgotten items, and faint memories tucked away behind cobwebs and dust. At first, I shuffled through the topmost boxes, labeled with Sarah's neat handwriting: winter clothes, camping gear, and books. But none seemed to contain the hoodies she mentioned. Determined, I moved deeper into the room, stepping carefully around an old exercise bike and a broken lamp we kept promising to fix. As I shifted a particularly heavy box of photo albums, my eyes caught sight of a smaller, nondescript box tucked away in a corner. The label was faded and slightly smudged, but I could just make out the words, "Old Stuff." Intrigued, I pulled it out and pried open the lid. Inside, the air seemed to shift as I was greeted by a collection of objects that instantly took me back in time. A dried flower, its petals fragile and brittle, crumbled slightly as I touched it. A faded concert ticket, scribbled notes, dozens of pictures, and finally, nestled at the very bottom, a delicate silver ring with a tiny heart-shaped charm. My chest tightened as I picked it up, the cold metal warming quickly in my palm. It was Arya's ring. The one that I had bought for her. My first love. The floodgates of memory opened wide, and for a moment I just sat there, on the cold floor of the storeroom, holding a piece of my past in my hands. Everything around me disappeared. The cold floor beneath me, the dim light flickering from the single bulb above, the sound of rain tapping against the window, all of it faded into the background, dissolving into nothingness. The moment I held that ring, it was as if time rewound itself, pulling me into a world I hadn't stepped into for years. My breathing slowed, my surroundings blurred, and all that remained was Arya. Her laughter echoed in my ears, that soft melodic sound I once swore I could recognize in a crowded room. I could see her eyes, warm, full of mischief, always holding unspoken words. I felt the gentle press of her fingers against mine, the way she used to lean her head on my shoulder, humming to a song only she knew. Every memory rushed in, one after another, like waves crashing over me, drowning me completely. I forgot where I was. I forgot what I had come to do. The storeroom, Sarah's hoodie, the present moment, it all ceased to exist. I was somewhere else now. Somewhere long lost, reliving moments that had been tucked away in the depths of my heart, untouched for years. Time had no meaning. Reality was a distant concept. All that remained was Arya. I still remember the first time I saw Arya. I was 15, awkward and gangly, still figuring out where I fit in the world. She had just moved into the house across the street, and I first noticed her from my bedroom window as she helped her parents carry boxes inside. There was something effortlessly captivating about her. Her long auburn hair tied up in a messy ponytail, the way she laughed at something her dad said. Her oversized hoodie hanging loosely over her small frame. That very evening, as I was riding my bike down the street, she waved me over with a bright, easy smile. "Hey, you live across from us, right?" she had asked, shifting a stray lock of hair behind her ear. That was it. That was how it all began. A simple wave, a simple question. And from that moment on, we were inseparable. We went to the same school, sat together during lunch, walked home together almost every day. She had this contagious energy, a way of making even the most mundane things feel special. I remember the afternoons spent sitting on the curb in front of our houses, sipping on cheap gas station sodas and talking about everything. Our dreams, our fears, the kind of people we wanted to become. Our parents adored our friendship. My mom often invited her over for dinner, and her mother always had an extra plate set aside for me. We were the kids who everyone assumed would grow up, fall in love and stay together forever. And in a way, that's exactly what happened. We never had to confess our feelings to each other. It was just understood. One day, she held my hand while we walked home, and that was that. We were us. Prom night was the kind of cliché you'd expect from a high school love story. I picked her up in a borrowed car, clumsily pinning a corsage to her wrist while she giggled at my fumbling fingers. She looked breathtaking in a deep blue dress that shimmered under the school gym lights. We danced for hours, our fingers laced together, swaying to songs that have long since faded from my memory, though the way she looked up at me that night never did. When the music slowed, she rested her head on my chest, and for a moment, the entire world melted away. Just like it did now, All these years later, sitting in the storeroom, holding the last piece of her I had left. Arya's face formed so clearly in my mind, as if she had been standing right in front of me. Her auburn hair, always slightly tousled no matter how much she tried to smooth it down, framed her delicate face. She had these deep brown eyes, filled with warmth and a spark of something unspoken. Like she knew a secret about the universe that the rest of us hadn't figured out yet. Her lips, always curling into a half smile, carried the remnants of laughter even when she wasn't speaking. She had a habit of tilting her head slightly when she was lost in thought, absent-mindedly twirling the ends of her hair between her fingers. She was effortless. Simple in the way she carried herself, but extraordinary in the way she made you feel. Arya wanted to be an actress. It was a dream she spoke about hesitantly, as if saying it out loud would make it disappear. She had this incredible talent. Whenever she stepped onto the stage in school plays, she transformed completely. I remember watching her perform in Romeo and Juliet, mesmerized as she delivered her lines with such raw emotion that it didn't feel like acting. But she never fully believed in herself. "It's silly," she would say, waving a dismissive hand. "People like us don't just go off and become movie stars." But I knew she wanted it. She'd light up when talking about old Hollywood films, reenacting scenes in our school corridors, making me play along even though I was terrible at it. Every now and then, she'd let herself dream out loud, saying things like, "Can you imagine me in a real movie one day?" before shaking her head and laughing it off. But I could imagine it. I always could. Because I knew, deep down, she belonged in a world much bigger than the one we grew up in. I remember the night it happened so vividly. Like a scene from a movie I never wanted to relive. We were sitting on our usual bench in the park, the one under the giant oak tree where we had spent countless evenings talking about everything and nothing. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp grass and distant bonfires, and Arya was lying on the bench with her head resting on my lap, staring up at the stars. She was talking about her dream again, about how incredible it would be to stand under the bright lights of Hollywood, to see her name on a movie poster, to hear people whisper about her in awe. I remember watching the way her eyes shimmered. How her voice carried a kind of quiet longing. And before I could stop myself, the words just spilled out. "What if you make it big and forget about me?" I said, trying to sound casual, but the weight in my voice betrayed me. She let out a soft chuckle, brushing it off at first. "Don't be ridiculous. Why would I ever forget you?" But I didn't stop there. Something in me, a quiet insecurity I hadn't even realized was there, pushed me further. I mean, everyone knows how Hollywood works. People do all kinds of things just to get ahead. What if, I hesitated for a second but forced the words out, what if you do something you regret? What if it changes you? Changes us? I felt her body stiffen against me, the warmth of our usual closeness suddenly vanishing. She sat up, her brows knitting together, her expression no longer dreamy but sharp, offended. "Are you seriously saying you think I'd... what? Sleep my way to the top? Betray you?" Her voice had an edge I'd never heard before. I tried to backtrack, to explain that it wasn't what I meant, that I was just worried, scared even. But the damage was already done. She crossed her arms, scoffing as she looked away. "Wow. So that's what you think of me? That I'd throw away everything we have for some career? That I'd become, like them?" I had never seen her like that before. Hurt, angry. Not at the world, not at some unfair circumstance, but at me. And the worst part, I realized I had made it sound like I didn't believe in her. Like I thought she wasn't strong enough to chase her dream and still hold on to us. The silence that followed was unbearable, stretching between us like an invisible wall. She shook her head, stood up, and before I could stop her, she was walking away. We didn't talk for days after that. It was the longest we had ever gone without speaking. I remember staring at my phone, hovering over her contact, debating whether I should call or text or just show up at her house. But pride and guilt tangled inside me, keeping me frozen. Nights felt different without her voice in my ear, without our late-night conversations about nothing and everything. And even though I knew I had hurt her, a selfish part of me was still scared of losing her to that world, the one I didn't understand, the one that felt too far away from the life we had built in our small corner of the world. It wasn't just about Hollywood. It was about the terrifying idea that we were growing up, that life was changing, and that no matter how much we held on, some things were beyond our control. And maybe, deep down, I had already started fearing that Arya was meant for something bigger than me. 3 days went by and we didn't see or talk to each other. My mother and sister had asked me multiple times if something had happened between us, and each time, I just forced a small smile and said no, we were just busy. But deep inside, I was restless, torn between my stubbornness and the aching need to see her, To hear her voice, to hold her hand like nothing had happened. My nights were sleepless, my thoughts a tangled mess of regret and frustration. Every place I went to in the neighborhood, every small routine of mine, reminded me of her absence. I'd glance at her house every time I stepped outside, half hoping, half dreading to see her standing at her window. But she wasn't there. And the weight of those silent days crushed me in a way I hadn't anticipated. By the end of the third day, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to talk to her, had to fix things. Swallowing my pride, I decided to go to her house. As I stepped out of my room and walked downstairs, my mind was racing with possibilities. How would she react? What would I even say? Would she still be mad, or had she already moved past it? My palms felt clammy as I reached for the front door handle, inhaling deeply before pulling it open. And there she was. Standing right outside, in the dim glow of the porch light, was Arya. Her dark hair was pulled into a loose ponytail, a few strands falling onto her face, and she was wearing that soft yellow hoodie she always wore when she was feeling down. And then she smiled. That smile, the one that made my heart stutter and my breath hitch in my throat. My mind went blank, and all the rehearsed words I had planned evaporated. Before I could say anything, she tilted her head slightly, her voice warm and familiar. "Hey, let's go for a walk." And just like that, everything felt right again. We walked side by side, our steps slow, unhurried, like neither of us wanted to reach wherever we were going. The silence between us wasn't heavy, but it wasn't exactly light either. I kept sneaking glances at her, trying to read her face, trying to guess what she was thinking. Was she still mad at me? Did she call me out just to say we were done? Or had she missed me as much as I missed her? My mind was tangled in a mess of words I wanted to say, rehearsing a dozen different ways to apologize, to explain, to make things right again. I just had to find the right way to start. But before I could, she suddenly stopped walking. I turned to her, confused. And the way she was looking at me, expressionless, unreadable, made my heart pound harder than it should have. She held my gaze for a few seconds, and I swear, those few seconds felt like an eternity. I had no idea what was happening. No idea what she was thinking. And just as I opened my mouth, stuttering out something, anything, she suddenly stepped forward and kissed me. Hard. It wasn't soft or hesitant like the first time we kissed. It was fierce, desperate, like she had been holding something back for days and couldn't take it anymore. My mind went blank. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe, forgot where we were, forgot everything except the way she felt pressed against me, the way her fingers curled into my shirt as if she was afraid I'd disappear. And just as suddenly as it happened, she pulled away, looking straight into my eyes, her breath warm against my lips. Then she said something I would never forget for as long as I lived. She whispered my name, her voice steady and sure, and said, "We are meant to be together forever." And just like that, everything felt right again. We walked for a long time that night, talking through everything. Our fight, our fears, our dreams. She told me how much my words had hurt her. How she never wanted to be seen as someone who would compromise her integrity for success. I apologized, not just with words, but with every fiber of my being. I told her I believed in her, that I always had, and that my fear had nothing to do with her but with my own insecurities. She understood eventually, and we laughed about how stubborn we both were. By the time we reached the end of the road near her house, the tension between us had dissolved into something warm again. Something familiar. And then, just as I thought the night couldn't get any better, she turned to me with a sparkle in her eyes, the kind she had when she was about to tell me something big. "I have news," she said, practically bouncing on her feet. "I'm going for an audition next week. It's for a role in a small film, but I have to travel out of town for it." Her excitement was contagious, and for a moment I forgot all my earlier fears. I grinned at her, feeling nothing but pride. "That's amazing, Arya. You're going to be incredible." She beamed, and before I could say anything else, she threw her arms around me, hugging me tightly. "You're the first person I'm telling this to," she whispered, and those words meant more to me than anything. Because in that moment I realized that no matter what happened, no matter where life took her, I was still the one she wanted to share her dreams with first. For the next few days I knew we wouldn't see each other because she'd be out of town with her father for the audition. I had no doubts she would do great. She had talent, passion, and a spark that could light up any room. So I waited patiently, counting down the days until she'd come back and tell me the good news. Every now and then I'd find myself smiling, imagining how she'd burst through my front door, unable to contain her excitement, talking a mile a minute about how amazing the whole experience was. I had talked to her the night before her audition, wished her luck and told her she was going to be incredible. But after that, her phone had been turned off. I figured she was just busy, caught up in the whirlwind of travel and preparation. The day she was supposed to return, a rainstorm rolled in. The sky darkened early, and the streets were drenched in an endless downpour. I sat by my window, watching the rain streak down the glass, waiting. I knew she'd be late, the roads must have been terrible, but still, I stayed there, hoping to see her familiar figure appear on the sidewalk. Hours passed. The rain didn't let up. Eventually, exhaustion took over, and I fell asleep with my head resting against the cool window pane. The next morning, a knock on my door jolted me awake. My heart jumped, thinking it was her. But when I opened the door, it was her mother, her face lined with worry. "She's not okay," she said, her voice soft but urgent. "She won't stop crying. She says she ruined everything." Confusion hit me like a wave. I rushed to their house and her father filled in the gaps. Before the audition, she had started getting nervous, seeing so many other people. Some older, some more experienced. The pressure had gotten to her. And when she finally stepped into the audition room, everything she had prepared for vanished from her mind. She fumbled, forgot her lines, and stumbled through the performance. She had walked out, saying only one thing: "They'll never call me back." I had never seen Arya break like this before. And as I stood outside her bedroom door, hearing her muffled sobs from the other side, I realized that in her mind, this wasn't just one failed audition. It was the shattering of a dream she had barely allowed herself to believe in. When I stepped into her room, the dim light from the bedside lamp cast long, soft shadows across the walls. She was curled up on her side, facing the wall, buried under a thick blanket as if she was trying to disappear. My heart ached at the sight of her, this girl who had always been so full of life, now looking so small, so defeated. I took a slow step forward, the floor creaking beneath me. "Arya," I whispered, my voice careful, gentle, afraid that if I spoke too loud she might shatter. As soon as she heard my voice, she threw the blanket off and turned around so quickly that for a second, I thought she might fall off the bed. Her face was streaked with tears, her eyes red and puffy, and before I could say anything, she rushed into my arms, clutching onto me like I was the only thing keeping her from breaking apart completely. She sobbed into my chest, her shoulders shaking violently. "I ruined everything," she choked out between gasps. "I had one chance, and I blew it." I held her tight, my hand instinctively moving to the back of her head, my fingers slipping through her hair in slow, comforting strokes. "Hey, no you didn't," I murmured, pressing my chin against the top of her head. "This was just one audition. There are going to be so many more. And you're going to get better, stronger. I know you, Arya. You don't give up." She shook her head against my chest. "You don't get it, they won't even remember me." I embarrassed myself. I couldn't even say a full sentence without messing up. Her voice cracked, and she pulled back just enough to look at me, her face full of raw pain. Maybe I was never meant to do this. The word stung, not because she doubted herself, but because I knew how much this dream meant to her. How deeply it was woven into who she was. "Don't say that," I said, cupping her face, forcing her to look at me. "You love this. You've always loved this. One bad day doesn't erase that. It doesn't erase you." She stared at me for a long moment, her lips trembling. Like she wanted to believe me but didn't know how. I kissed her forehead softly, lingering there for a second, hoping she could feel everything I couldn't put into words. "You're going to get there, Arya. I know you will." She didn't say anything, just buried herself into my arms again, and I held her like I never wanted to let go. It took a couple of days, but she started becoming normal again, just like before. I could feel it in the way she laughed a little louder. In the way she hummed along to songs. The movies. We always went to the little indie theater downtown, the one with the vintage posters plastered on the walls, the one that had a certain smell of old popcorn and velvet seats. I wasn't the biggest fan of movies, but for Arya, it felt like magic. Every time we sat down, she'd settle into her seat with this excited look in her eyes, as if she was about to be swept away into another world. She never said it, but I wondered if deep down, she was just dreaming of seeing herself up there on that big screen. Her face larger than life, glowing under the soft spotlight. I'd watch her sometimes, her eyes glued to the screen, and for a second, I thought maybe she was living out a fantasy, imagining a different life for herself. And that thought didn't bother me. As long as she was with me, I was happy. Besides movies, Arya had this thing for taking pictures. The Polaroid camera I gave her on her birthday, the one I'd saved up for months to get, was her most prized possession. I loved watching her hold it with that gentle yet excited grip, her fingers poised to capture some fleeting moment that, to her, was worth preserving forever. She would always take pictures of the simplest things, but they felt so important. A flower she found on our walk, its petals still wet from the morning dew. The way the rain fell against the window, creating tiny rivers down the glass. Us together, in that one moment when everything felt right. I can still picture her sitting on her bed, a Polaroid in one hand, carefully scribbling a little note on the back with a smile on her face. She'd stick them up on her desk or pin them to her wall, creating a map of memories that I was lucky enough to be a part of. And she gave me so many of those pictures. Each one she handed to me felt like a piece of her, a part of our life together she wanted me to keep. I would tuck them away in a box under my bed, safe from the world, as if somehow they were the most precious things in my life. Her smile, God, her smile, was the only thing that mattered. It made everything else fade away. After a couple of weeks, she told me again that she had gotten another opportunity to audition for some roles. This time, there was a flicker of uncertainty in her voice, like she was unsure whether it was worth it, unsure if she had the strength to face more rejection. But I could see it in her eyes, the spark that had always been there, just waiting to be reignited. She had this dream, this ambition that I couldn't completely understand, but I couldn't deny how much it meant to her. "You've got this, Arya," I said. Even though I knew how many others were out there chasing the same dream. I knew how hard it could be to get noticed, to stand out. But I encouraged her to keep trying. Keep going. I told her it didn't matter how many doors closed, as long as she kept pushing. I didn't realize at the time how much she was already changing, how the pressure of those auditions was reshaping her. Over the next few weeks, I noticed it more and more. She became more composed, more mature in how she approached each audition. At first, I had seen how much rejection stung her, how it made her question her abilities, but now, she seemed almost immune to it. It was like she had built some invisible shield around herself, protecting her from the emotional roller coaster of hope and disappointment. She would come back from auditions, her face still as bright as ever, talking about how things had gone, but this time there was no desperation in her voice. No urgency. It was like she understood, in some deep way, that this path wasn't about instant results, it was a journey. I admired that strength in her, the way she'd learned to pick herself up after every setback. She wasn't just chasing a dream anymore. She was living it, one small step at a time. And I was still there, cheering her on, even though I had no real idea of what it felt like to be in her shoes. All I could do was support her, be her constant. Our lives were moving forward, one day at a time, just like any other young couple's life would. We had graduated from high school, our feet already stepping into the real world, uncertain but excited. We had both agreed to take a gap year before college, just to breathe and figure things out. Arya had her plans. She wanted to study acting. Maybe even film, the kind of stuff that always made her light up when she talked about it. She was so sure of what she wanted, and it made me both proud and nervous for her. I was still figuring it out. College felt like this looming thing, but it also felt like a big, exciting next step, like we were about to begin the next chapter of our lives. I couldn't help but think about how different everything would be once we both started going to different colleges. The distance would change things, maybe in ways I couldn't predict. I didn't know how we'd handle it, but I knew deep down that I didn't want to lose her. In the midst of all this uncertainty, there was one thing I knew for sure. I wanted to ask her to marry me. I knew that once we went our separate ways, life would change. We'd grow. Maybe we'd meet new people. Maybe we'd become different versions of ourselves. But I didn't want to leave anything to chance. I wanted her to know how much I loved her. How much she meant to me. I knew it wasn't about the right moment or the perfect timing. It was about making her feel as special as she made me feel. But I wanted it to be magical. Something that would make her heart race, something she would remember forever. The problem was, I couldn't figure out what that perfect moment would look like. I wanted it to feel like the moment when everything falls into place, like the universe had conspired to make it happen. I didn't know if that moment would come before college, after we had time to grow apart, or when we were standing together at the crossroads of our lives. But I knew that when it did come, I would be ready. I just didn't want to wait too long, because I couldn't stand the thought of losing her, even if we hadn't even started yet. One of these ordinary days, where nothing seemed out of the usual, Arya came running to my house like a storm, her footsteps pounding against the wooden floor downstairs. I was in my room, lost in some book I wasn't really reading, but the second I heard her voice calling my name, my heart jumped. She didn't even knock, she never did. She just burst through the door, and before I could even react, she threw her arms around me, holding me so tight that I could barely breathe. But I didn't care. I could feel the energy radiating off of her, the kind of happiness that didn't come often, but when it did, it made everything else seem small. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were shining. Her cheeks flushed with excitement, and she could barely get the words out fast enough. The first audition I gave. They called me back. They want me to audition again because they think I'm the perfect choice for the character. Her words tumbled over each other, her smile so wide it was impossible not to catch the joy spilling from her. I had never seen her this happy before. Not even when she got her first Polaroid camera, not even when she aced her hardest exam. This was different. This was her dream knocking on her door. And I was just as excited. She told me she had to leave that very night with her dad so she could make it to the audition on time the next morning. She was practically glowing as she spoke, and for a moment I just stood there, taking it all in. Watching her talk about her dream coming to life was like watching a fire come alive in front of me. Beautiful, bright, and unstoppable. I knew this was big. I knew this could change everything. But at that moment, I didn't think about the future. I just celebrated her happiness with her. She had barely finished telling me before she rushed back home, eager to share the news with her parents. The second she left, my mind was made up. I was going to propose to her when she came back. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for. I had spent weeks thinking about the right time, the right place, but now I knew there was no such thing as perfect timing. Sometimes, you just have to take the leap. She was chasing her dream, and I wanted her to know that no matter where life took us, no matter how far apart we ended up, my heart would always be with her. A few hours later, she left for her audition and I found myself more restless than ever. Maybe I was even more excited than she was. 1, because she was finally getting her shot, and 2, because I was about to ask the love of my life to be with me forever. It felt like everything was falling into place. That night, I went to the small jewelry store in town, the one with the glass display case that always caught my eye when I walked past. I didn't have much money. I never did, but it didn't matter. I spent every single penny I had saved up over the past few months to buy the most beautiful silver ring I could find. It wasn't big, it wasn't flashy, but it was perfect. Simple, elegant, and something I knew would look stunning on her hand. I held it in my palm for a long time after buying it, tracing my fingers over the smooth surface, imagining the moment I'd slip it onto her finger. That night, I barely slept. My mind was racing with thoughts of Aria. Her laughter, the way she tilted her head when she was deep in thought, the way her eyes sparkled when she talked about movies. All I could think about was her. I kept picturing the way she'd react when I got down on one knee, the way her face would light up in surprise, the way she'd maybe cry a little, because Aria was the kind of person who felt everything so deeply. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. My heart pounding, counting down the hours until she'd be back. The next afternoon, my phone rang. It was Aria. I answered it instantly, my heart racing, expecting to hear her usual excited chatter. But the second she spoke, I knew this was different. She wasn't just happy, she was overwhelmed. Her voice was shaky, full of emotion, and I could hear the tears in her voice. "I got it," she whispered. And then she let out a small laugh, the kind of laugh that comes when you can't believe something is real. "I got the role, I really got it." And then, just like that, she broke down in happy tears. I could picture her standing there, her hand over her mouth, trying to hold back the flood of emotions but failing miserably. I had never heard her cry like this before. Not from sadness, not from pain, but from pure, unfiltered joy. And in that moment, I felt it. This was it. The magical moment I had always dreamed of. Everything was perfect. I was so incredibly happy for her, but I was also happy for us, for what was about to happen when she got back. I knew that by the time the sun set tomorrow, Aria would not only have her biggest dream coming true, but she would also know just how much I loved her. I was ready. She hung up the phone with a soft, almost breathless, "I'll see you soon." Her voice was filled with excitement, happiness, everything I wanted to hear. And yet, even after the call ended, I kept holding the phone against my ear as if I could still hear her on the other side. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. This was it. The moment I had been waiting for. In just a few hours, Aria would be standing in front of me and I would finally get to tell her everything. Everything I had felt for her since we were kids. Everything I had ever wanted for us. I needed to keep myself busy, so I started getting ready, carefully picking out what to wear. Nothing too fancy, just something I knew she liked. A shirt she once said looked good on me, the shoes she playfully teased me about because she thought they were too clean. It felt silly to think about these little details, but right now, every small thing mattered. I went over the plan in my head 1,000 times. As soon as she got out of the car, we'd all be there, waiting to welcome her back. She'd be glowing with happiness, her dream finally beginning to take shape. And in that perfect moment, I'd drop to one knee, open the small box and ask her to be mine forever. With the ring clenched tightly in my palm, I sat on the porch, our porch, the same one where we had spent countless nights talking about everything and nothing. The wooden planks beneath me felt colder than usual, or maybe it was just my nerves. Time was moving painfully slow. 2 hours had passed, then 3, then 4. My excitement slowly began to twist into something else, an odd unsettling feeling in my chest. She was supposed to be here by now. My hands started fidgeting. Maybe they got stuck in traffic. Maybe they stopped somewhere to celebrate. I kept making up scenarios in my head, but each one felt emptier than the last. I tried calling her. No answer. I called again. Her phone was off. My stomach clenched. That never happened. Even when she was busy, even when she was tired, she never turned off her phone. My fingers felt stiff as I dialed her dad's number. No answer. His phone was off too. A strange hollow feeling settled in my chest, one that I couldn't shake no matter how hard I tried. And then, without thinking, I got up and started walking. My legs carried me toward her house before my mind could catch up. The night air felt thicker, heavier, as if something was pressing down on me. My hands were trembling, and I didn't know why. Maybe it was just nerves. Maybe I was just overthinking. But every step felt heavier than the last. I was just a few steps away from her home when the front door suddenly swung open. Her mother stood there, framed by the dim porch light, her face pale, her eyes wide and wet with tears. She didn't speak. She just looked at me. And in that moment, something inside me cracked. Then, before I could process anything, Arya's little brother ran out after her, his face red and tear-streaked. His small hands clutched onto his mother's dress, but his voice was clear, shaking with fear and grief. They just got a call from the highway police. His voice wavered, and I felt my breath hitch. There was a terrible accident. They don't know what happened, but they said both Dad and Arya. He swallowed hard, his little fingers gripping the fabric tighter, as if holding on for dear life. They passed away. Everything around me blurred. The world didn't make sense anymore. The porch, the house, the night sky, everything became distant, faded. It was as if my mind refused to register the words that had just been spoken. No. That wasn't possible. I had just talked to her. She had just told me she'd see me soon. She was coming home. But she never did. A ringing noise filled my ears, drowning out everything else. My knees felt weak, like they could give out any second. But I didn't move. I couldn't. Her mother was sobbing now, holding onto the door frame as if she needed it to stay standing. The little boy kept looking at me, waiting for me to say something. But I had no words. I had nothing. And then finally, the weight of reality crushed down on me. The ring in my hand, the moment I had dreamed of, the future I had planned, it was all slipping away, shattered in an instant. The person I loved most in this world, the girl who filled every corner of my life with light, was gone. Just like that. A sudden violent crash of thunder ripped through the sky, jolting me back to the present. The sound was so loud that it made the windows rattle, and for a moment I swore the entire house trembled with it. My breath hitched as my mind clawed its way out of the past, dragging me away from Arya's smile, her laughter, the sound of her voice lingering like a fading melody in my ears. My fingers instinctively tightened around the old weathered box in my lap, the box that held the last tangible pieces of her. The storm outside had been raging for hours, but I hadn't noticed. Lost in memories, I hadn't even realized how long I had been sitting here. In this dimly lit storage room, surrounded by dust and the echoes of a life that never came to be. I blinked, my vision blurry. Not sure if it was from exhaustion or the tears that had silently slipped down my face. More than 10 years had passed, and yet, the pain still felt raw, fresh, as if no time had passed at all. It still lived inside me, buried under layers of daily responsibilities, fatherhood, marriage, work. But all it took was a quiet night, a few old photographs and a storm to peel those layers away and expose the wound again. Taking a deep breath, I carefully placed everything back into the box. The silver ring that never made it to her finger, the Polaroid pictures she had given me, each one carrying a piece of her soul. I wiped away a stray tear before gently closing the lid, making sure to place the box where it wouldn't get damaged. I wasn't ready to let go, not yet. Maybe not ever. When I stepped outside, the rain was still falling in a steady rhythm, the early morning sky painted in hues of deep gray and fading black. The world was drenched, the air thick with the scent of wet earth and something almost nostalgic. I walked to the old swing on my porch. I lowered myself onto it, the chains creaking softly under my weight, and let the rain mix with the warmth of my tears. I closed my eyes, allowing my mind to drift again. I imagined how different life would have been if she were still here. How old would she be today? 30. Maybe she'd be a huge movie star, living the life she had always dreamed of. Maybe she would have married someone who supported her career, someone who stood beside her as she walked down red carpets, giving interviews, signing autographs. Maybe she would have had kids of her own, a little girl with her same bright, expressive eyes, running around, filling the world with laughter the way Arya always did. Would I ever see her again? In another life, in some other place beyond this world? My heart ached at the thought, but I knew the answer wasn't mine to know. Reality was cruel like that. Arya was like a beautiful dream, one that I would always remember, always cherish, but one I could never return to. And I had to step back into reality. As I sat there, staring at the horizon, I noticed the storm was beginning to pass. The heavy clouds were slowly breaking apart, and just beyond them the first sliver of sunlight peeked through. A silver lining. A quiet reminder that no matter how dark the night gets, the sun always finds a way back. I exhaled, running a tired hand through my damp hair before forcing myself to get up. I went inside, took a long hot shower, letting the water wash away the coldness that had settled deep in my bones. I dressed up, made myself a cup of coffee and stood by the kitchen window for a moment, watching the last raindrops slide down the glass. Then without another thought, I grabbed my car keys and headed out. I wasn't supposed to see them for a couple more days, but I needed to. I needed to see my wife and my kids. I needed to feel the warmth of their hugs, hear their voices, remind myself that life was still moving forward. Because as much as Arya would always be a part of me, I knew she would never want me to stay stuck in the past. As I drove, the sky continued to clear, the sun slowly rising higher, painting the world in gold. And for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to breathe.